During the Second World War, over 4,000 members of the Polish Air Force were killed while serving in 14 RAF bomber and fighter squadrons. Given the huge risks that these people were taking, it is hardly surprising that they let their hair down when they finally landed back at base. The leader of Squadron 303, Jan Zumbach, who was based at RAF Northolt, which is just behind this monument, he alone shot down 13 German planes. His mother cried, "All pilots are drunken madmen," when she heard about her son's career plans. And to be honest, she wasn't far from the truth.
When it came to enjoying life, Polish pilots were unsurpassed in Britain. English women were overwhelmed by the Poles' good manners. They were gentlemen, they would buy flowers, and they'd kiss a lady's hand. John Colville, Churchill's private secretary, described Polish pilots as the best of our allies. One British pilot said that unlike his fellow countrymen who simply flew where they were told, Polish pilots would hunt down the enemy. In war-torn London, there were lots of tales of their bravery. One such said that a Polish pilot would only open fire when he was near enough to see the whites of the enemy's eyes.
Polish pilots who served with the RAF during the Second World War shot down 769 enemy aircraft, according to some historians. In the Battle of Britain alone, just 151 Polish pilots brought down 203 German planes. On the 4th of July 1943, General Władysław Sikorski, the Prime Minister of the Polish government in exile, was killed in a plane crash off the coast of Gibraltar. Well, this was a huge setback in the war effort because at the time of his death, under his command, he had 150,000 troops on the Western Front. He was also in charge of 350,000 soldiers of the Resistance Home Army who were based in the Nazi-occupied Polish territories. Well, his funeral mass was held here at Westminster Cathedral.
One of the Polish soldiers who attended the funeral said, "At 10 o'clock, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom arrived in an open car. Churchill was sombre and it seemed to me worried. The enormous church was filled to the brim with official figures, representatives of the government, allies and British military officers." Well, the whole funeral lasted 3 days, and the cortege route itself was almost 30 kilometres long. King George VI expressed his grief at the death of an ally. "I was deeply shocked by General Sikorski's tragic death. My people will fully share the Polish nation's sorrow in its grievous loss of a distinguished citizen and soldier who has rendered outstanding service not only to his own country, but to the common cause of the United Nations."
General Sikorski was buried at Newark Cemetery alongside Polish pilots. In his will, he requested that should his remains be transferred across the English Channel, it would only be to a free Poland. Well, his request was finally granted 50 years after his death, when Poland was granted independence in 1993. During the Second World War, Poles had, according to some sources, the fourth largest Allied army. Well, they didn't stop fighting after their defeat at the hands of the Germans in 1939. A year later, they fought in Norway and in France. They defended the skies at the Battle of Britain. They fought in Africa and in Italy. And they also liberated the Netherlands and northern Germany. Well, let's not forget also their work behind the scenes. Nearly half of the information gathered by the British intelligence came from the Poles. Well, on the 8th of June in 1946, a victory parade was held for the Allied forces here along the Mall. If you have a look at the internet, it's possible to see moving colour pictures of the victory parade held here in London in 1946. On the 8th of June 1946, the victory parade of the Allied forces took place here on the Mall. Only 25 representatives of Polish Fighter Squadron 303, distinguished in the Battle of Britain, were invited by the British authorities to participate in that event. However, Polish airmen refused to take part in the parade in a gesture of solidarity with those omitted infantry troops and naval forces. Britain did not want to exacerbate its relations with the Soviet Union, so an invitation to participate in the parade was sent to the command of the Polish People's Army, a communist military force subordinate to Moscow, which didn't even take part in the fighting on the Western Front. Also, from a purely statistical point of view, its contribution to the victory of the Allied forces was non-existent. It consisted of up to 30,000 soldiers. In comparison, the number of soldiers of the Home Army, commanded by the government in exile in London, reached about 380,000. The Second World War didn't bring Poland its long-wanted freedom, and the soldiers found themselves to be once again the victims of politics. It was only 60 years after the end of the war that 320 Polish veterans representing all of the armed forces were invited here for a victory parade. Polish Institute and Sikorski Museum was founded in May 1945. Initially, it was only meant to house the archives of the Polish government in exile, as well as a few items once belonging to General Sikorski, the Polish Prime Minister, who died tragically in 1943. However, over time, the collection grew. This room is dedicated to General Maciek and the 1st Polish Armoured Division. Here in this photo we can actually see German soldiers surrendering to him. The general and his men fought in northern France, in Belgium, the Netherlands and in Germany, and they liberated towns and cities as they went. There is no doubt that the general was incredibly brave, but his short length of service with the British Army meant that he wasn't entitled to a pension. So he ended his days working as a bartender in a pub owned by one of his former soldiers. In these rooms we learn about Polish regiments and their commanders. This This cabinet is dedicated to the 10th Mounted Rifles. In 1920, they fought the Red Army when Lenin wanted to push the revolution across to Western Europe. This is one of the regiments that stopped him in his tracks. In 1939, they fought to protect the city of Lvov from the Germans, but then when the Red Army attacked, they felt they couldn't win, so they descended, they crossed the border into Hungary. Now, in 1940, they fought to protect France. And then after D-Day, they fought in northern France, they fought in Belgium, they fought in the Netherlands, and they fought in Germany. These items, they don't just tell the story of one regiment, they represent every single Polish soldier.
For many years after the war, the unofficial leader of the Polish immigration, General Anders, had his office here, where he received dozens of people every day and where he tried to help them adapt to living in exile.
The Royal Albert Hall is one of the most famous concert halls in the world. Now, even though it was built in the second half of the 19th century to hold classical music concerts, mainstream artists have performed here, the likes of the Cream, the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix. Now, before the invasion of rock and roll, a unique concert took place here in honour of the Polish composer Chopin.
Witold Małcużyński was the pianist. The conductor and composer was Andrzej Panównik. They were both from Poland. Their performance attracted a huge audience. The draw was amplified by the fact